Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan.
And I'm Rob.
And this is our Week 17 podcast.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
Now that most of the fantasy playoffs are in their final week to 2 weeks, we're going to spare you any more ill-advised player picks and instead start to preview the top 24 players that you should target in the first 2 rounds of your fantasy redraft league. So we're going to be assuming this is a 12-team league, and this is going to be the following picks we think based off of the performance of this past year and what we think is going to happen in the previous year. This is non-dynasty redraft only. Rob, we're going to start with Jonathan Taylor. Is this a surprise or is it a knee-jerk reaction? Does Henry sleep here? What do you think's going on?
In all honesty, Jonathan Taylor had himself a monster year this year. Anytime a running back kind of tends to have this kind of season, I think we're all reluctant to take him number one. But I like the pick. To be honest, I don't think you can really go wrong with Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry. What's your thoughts here on this, Ryan?
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, he's had a ton of 100-yard games. He's getting touchdowns in multiple weeks consecutively. He's been an absolute monster since Henry got hurt. He's involved in the passing game, no matter what that idiot Matthew Berry says. Derrick Henry, though, you've got him number 2. Number 2, we're taking Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is not going to be an afterthought this season for you. Tell us why.
No, not at all. Outside of the injury that he sustained, he was looking to crush every single running back record of a full season. Look at Tennessee today. They can't rely on Tannehill. A.J. Brown is a nice thought, but Derrick Henry clearly is the man who wears the crown in the NFL this season, correct?
I think so. Derrick Henry is going to be that downfield bruiser. As you were saying, he was on pace for about 1,800 to 2,000 yards when we were talking on the phone earlier before his injury happened. So Derrick Henry might be back to help the Titans out in the playoffs. Number 3, Nick Chubb. We're taking Nick Chubb here. Nick Chubb did get hurt. There are injury risks here. But tell us why you like Nick Chubb as one of those workhorse backs.
I think he's proven it. The guy's a workhorse. The guy can be a bell cow, running back, even with Kareem Hunt having, sustained a few injuries this year. Nick Chubb stepped up and continued to essentially progress as a bell cow running back, which is what we look for in fantasy. And the Browns aren't relying on the passing game with Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to be shocked if they end up drafting a quarterback somewhere in the early rounds of the 2022 draft, right? I got to think Nick Chubb's third here.
Yeah, and Nick Chubb, he seems like he's always got that volume and TD upside. So, I'm just going to say, for this next pick, though, number 4, Austin Eckler. Yeah. It's kind of interesting because, we don't immediately think of him as somebody we take in the top 5. But I think at time and time again, he's proven he can be that running back. He's ranked 2 on the season, averaging 19 points a game. He's going, on a streak of over 10 fantasy points per game since week 10. Austin Eckler is officially one of those backs, and I think this is a great pick. You were kind of making a case for him at number 4. Now, number 5, a little controversial. I'm going to go with this one, even though he's been underwhelming in his efficiency, Najee Harris. What do you make of this pick that I'm putting at number 5?
I love it. I think Najee Harris has just stepped into, another bell cow running back role. These are the running backs that we want to draft, and we want to draft them early and often. And I think Najee Harris and the Pittsburgh Steelers are a solid O-line / quarterback away from going back to being what Pittsburgh is normally in an NFL season. And I don't really... It really does. I think it is starting to boil down to O-line because even Big Ben has looked decent this season, but they need to be able to extend plays, and when defenses aren't looking for just a pure running game like it was very early on in this season with Pittsburgh, Najee Harris more or less just kind of looked like he kind of got shut down, but that has more to do with the O-line than it does the team itself. What's your thoughts?
Well, it begs the question. We put him here at number 5 because we think we would take him over a lot of these other players. Christian McCaffrey, you're putting at 6. Would you take him above a lot of the players we're putting after this?
No, because Christian McCaffrey at this point is starting to worry me. I mean, this is 2 years now of us essentially talking about, and spoiler alert, we're not talking about a running back with that 7th pick. We're talking about Devontae Adams. So now we're sitting there dipping into the wide receiver pool in fantasy. I still really like
because I would
McCaffrey.
take Devontae Adams. Yeah, I would probably take Devontae Adams before McCaffrey, but I think a lot of people out there are taking McCaffrey 6th, maybe Devontae Adams 7th, and then we're talking about 8, Joe Mixon. Devontae Adams has got that volume.
Yes.
And I think it matters because he's also right now got the QB throwing to him. If Aaron Rodgers, with all the turmoil going on, if he doesn't stay in Green Bay, I think Devontae Adams' stock takes a hit. But if things ended right now, Devontae Adams is number 7. Before number 8, Joe Mixon, who's having a surprising season. Well, somewhat surprising. Remember, this guy was one of the top running prospects in the league coming into the league until he punched his girlfriend or whatever happened there at that nightclub. That woman, or I'm not sure if he punched his girlfriend. I forget that story if I'm mixing him up with Ray Rice. But Joe Mixon, number 8, after the seasons he's had, he's in the passing game and the running game. Now, we put him at number 8 here. The question is, here's a guy you didn't like so much over the years, but we've talked about his volume, which now he's starting to lose a little bit to Tony Pollard, but he's still producing. Do you take Joe Mixon at 8 before Ezekiel Elliott at 9?
Yeah, I don't think you could really go wrong with either. I think Joe Mixon now has that very solid offense, very suddenly solid offense in Cincy with Joe Burrow doing what he's doing. Their wide receivers are just crazy deep. And Joe Mixon's now having that ability to run in Cincinnati. Joe Mixon, he's comfortable in Cincy. He's known the playbook for how many years now? And now he's essentially taking on a bigger role due to the fact that they have a competent quarterback and receivers that are just as deep as any team in the NFL, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Mixon, I like him at 8. Joe Burrow's on fire. They've got the passing game going on with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So they've got that play action capability going on. So Joe Mixon is great for fantasy purposes if he stays healthy. And he did not miss a game this season. He did not. Ezekiel Elliott at 9, interesting there because we're talking like he might have an injury. But I still take Ezekiel Elliott before a lot of the other guys we're going to put on this list because you need your RB1. Rounding out the top 10, Leonard Fournette. We love him. LSU guy. On the Jaguars, we hated when the Jaguars got rid of him. Is he top 10 worthy? Knowing what we know about the time split he had with Ronald Jones, is he the bell cow going forward, or is this a one-off?
I think this is a bell cow. I really, really do because I think the talent has always been there. I think his talent was wasted in Jacksonville, just like anybody else that has gone through the Jacksonville Jaguars team. I mean, we've seen it time in and time out. I think Leonard Fournette essentially was able to revitalize his career in Tampa because of the fact that, he was given the chance he was needed, and he was surrounded by, absolute, not just fantasy, but NFL studs that he doesn't have to be the go-to guy. Never, and when it comes to the NFL, never has it ever that a running back is essentially looked at as the go-to guy and survives 5-6 years, right? I mean, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Well, this is the question. Leonard Fournette over Alvin Kamara, who Alvin Kamara is losing his volume, even though he was getting most of his volume when Mark Ingram was in New Orleans. Do you take Leonard Fournette over Alvin Kamara? Do you like that pick next year?
Absolutely. And that boils down to quarterback.
And that's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
So, are you taking Leonard Fournette as your RB1 over Justin Jefferson?
And that's where this conversation continues to have more fun. We're talking about Justin Jefferson at 11. And yes,
11 Justin Jefferson.
Because I think, in my honest opinion, I would rather have let's just say, a top 10 running back than a top 10 receiver. And the reason I say that is because year in and year out, there are guys, and we've talked about this before, this year alone that went in the round 6 beyond. That's this year, like a
right,
Cooper
like
Kupp
Mike
or
Cooper
Deebo
Kupp
Samuel,
and Jamar Chase picks.
That are the number 1 and number 3
so I mean,
wide receivers. We're talking about running backs. We need running backs.
And I like the volume that Justin Jefferson gets. The amount
Absolutely.
of targets are absolutely insane. We don't know if Kirk Cousins is going to be on the Vikings next year, who's going to be thrown to him. But as things stand right now, I'm probably taking Justin Jefferson over guys like Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. Just knowing what we know from the injury standpoint, do we need the RB1 when there's all these injuries going on? But number 12, this is a trend we've done together that you kind of got me onto. We were taking Travis Kelce in the first round when a lot of the running backs were off the board. Are we doing that this year? Round 1, pick 12. Is Travis Kelce it?
I'm looking at. I would love to have. We're talking about 12-team leagues. I would love to have a wraparound where I could get Kelce and a very formidable back. So I'm looking here at Travis Kelce at 12 for sure because of the fact, in my honest opinion, yes, Mark Andrews scored more points than Travis Kelce, but how many times have we said that in the last, 8 years? Not many. And we're not even just talking about Mark Andrews. We're talking about any tight end. I'm talking about the best tight end in fantasy, period. The best player at that position. A lot of people talk zig and zag in fantasy football or just fantasy drafts in general. When people are taking one position, go another route, and just keep doing that each round. I'm taking Kelce at 12, and then we're talking about our
and
guys.
Then on the wraparound pick, we're talking about Alvin Kamara, maybe.
Dalvin Cook at
Right.
13 and 14, where we place them. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, Kamara is a great pick here because I think he's less of an injury risk than someone like Dalvin Cook, despite what happened this season. I think it was mostly just because it was a lost season that they were kind of taking it easy on him. They knew he didn't have a quarterback. So what's the QB impact on him next year? Do you take that risk on the injuries? I think you take Kamara over our next pick at 14, which is Dalvin Cook, who's also the injury risk.
Yeah.
I like Kamara over Dalvin Cook, even though we've seen what we've seen this year.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely, but I'll say the same thing, and I think you have to agree with me. You can't go wrong with either one at 13 or 14, correct?
Right, so those running backs go off the board.
Right.
Now we've kind of run out of running backs. We're talking about the guys, Antonio Gibson, Aaron Jones left, people like that, and we called, the Aaron Jones runoff this year. We actually have that on a number of podcasts where he got way less 20-point games this year than he did last year. He only had a few this year. So we're talking about, with the risk to running backs and the way that QBs are scored so highly, and there's so many running QBs in the league now who can score high. Are we talking Josh Allen at 15 before a lot of these other position players?
Yeah, and hold your ears if you don't like bad language. Abso-fucking-lutely. Josh Allen has proven, you're talking about players that just prove themselves and now we just have to take it. Josh Allen is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. He's got great weapons. He's got a great arm. He can throw downfield, and he can run with his feet. I know that sounds ridiculous, but man, when it comes to fantasy football, we have talked endlessly about Jalen Hurts. What's saving Jalen Hurts' season in fantasy this year is his legs. And nobody does it better than Josh Allen. No, he's not.
So what I think happens after this is Josh Allen goes because they know he's going to put up 350 points compared to some of the other quarterbacks. But there's one other guy who can do that. So they're going to incite some QB draft panic. At number 16, I think Patrick Mahomes goes to the guy who was, earlier in the round, first round, taking running back. So you got your running back. Now you're wrapping around. You saw the first guy get his QB. Mahomes goes now before a lot of these other players.
I couldn't agree with you more, to be completely honest, and to kind of take it a step further, where a lot of people in the last few years, and probably even the last decade, to be completely honest, would always tell me, you can wait on a quarterback. I don't think that's true anymore. And to be completely honest with you, in a first round where I can get that elite running back, I want that elite quarterback right behind him because wide receivers are so deep. Again, we were kind of hint on what we were just talking about. I would rather have a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes over any receiver that we would either name or even aforementioned. I just would. I would rather have that quarterback that I don't have to worry about, where people had the Kirk Cousins or Ryan Tannehills this year that fell flat in certain weeks. I'd rather have that guy that I can go, he'll at least get me 20
And then
to
once
25
people
points.
see them go off the board like that,
Yes.
that's when they're going to start thinking to themselves like, okay, Allen's off the board, Mahomes is off the board. I don't want Lamar Jackson. I don't want Jalen Hurts yet. I'll take Antonio Gibson at 17.
Love it.
Antonio Gibson, who's had a great season, the 12th ranked running back, but at 17, that's great value. Assuming everybody took a running back, you're getting him at great value if he's position ranked 12. He's rostered in 97.9% of ESPN leagues, which is unbelievable. The dude should be all over the place. He is averaging 13 points a game. He hasn't had a 100-yard game all season on the ground, but combined with his receiving yards, he's had multiple, 73 against Buffalo, and a TD on that long drive. It's just one of those things where I think, Antonio Brown is a good fit. Antonio Gibson is a good fit right here. Before the next guy we're going to talk about,
Wait, real
who
quick,
I said was going to take a drop off at the beginning.
Let me piggyback off this. Where I love Gibson is where you take a Travis Kelce at 12. So you get a Kelce, let's just say at 12, and get Gibson. I think that's a great consolation prize.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure where you
For RB1.
Travis.
You get Kelce at 12, and you get that wrap.
Well, Travis Kelce gets Kamara at 13.
Well, let's just
so.
Do you not just lump Kamara, Cook, Gibson? Those have to be the next top 3 running backs, right?
Well, exactly, but yeah, again, the person who drafted Kelce got Kamara. Gibson falls a little later, but it's somebody who's going to get their
Justin Jefferson,
their second position player.
Sure.
Aaron Jones, however, could go right after him, even though we thought there was going to be a drop-off. He is a PPR darling. So even with the emergence of A.J. Dillon, we have to see where, Brett Favre comes in. But Aaron Jones is not top 5. Aaron Jones will come in and kind of steal the show because there's a lot of, odd running backs we'll talk about later that are left on the board that you don't want to spend these picks on. So after that, at 19, Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
With an elite QB throwing to him,
right.
You have to take him here. But the question is, look at the next guys we took. Let's talk about 20, the guy who's on your team. We're going to take at 20, Deebo Samuel. Do you think he's worth it here with his history?
I think the way San Francisco's willing to run their play calling and being very unorthodox for taking Deebo Samuel, essentially making him a running back this year. Yeah, sure. What if Deebo Samuel ends up getting RB wide receiver flex position play? That's a pretty solid option, right? And now again, we're talking about, just like we had hinted on earlier on, these wide receivers that went 5th, 6th round and beyond. Deebo Samuel was an afterthought in drafts this year, correct?
Yeah, and much like the next guy we'll talk about, who I drafted pretty late. Next 2 guys, actually, that we'll talk about. I didn't even have Deebo Samuel really on my radar. He used to be on your fantasy keeper team. There were some injuries there. Who knows if he keeps it up? But at the moment, he seems to be the consistent option. When guys are consistent with their targets and consistent with the yards, you take him. So Cooper Kupp, 21. Do we take him at 21, Cooper Kupp? Just seeing the season he had this year compared to 2017 up to this point.
I think people do. Me, no. I'm not taking Cooper Kupp here because I just feel like he's having a career year, could quite possibly be having his career year. I love Stafford in LA. That is something we talked about early on in our quarterback review this year. All signs were pointing to yes on every single position player in the Rams organization this year, and Cooper Kupp was the one that took that leap. And it does, it sure as hell helps that Robert Woods later on the season is missing the season. Cam Akers isn't the starting running back. They're now finding their running back situation with Sony Michel. I think Kupp's having a career year. Will he ever repeat this? I truly doubt it. So I'm not the guy.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. We're talking about there's 2 games left, 177 targets, 132 receptions.
All career highs.
He's got 1,734 yards. He's got 14 touchdowns. It's just with 2 games left. Again, you can not expect this to happen again next year. But that brings us to the next point. Jamar Chase, who's having a rookie season, much like Justin Jefferson, where he's breaking out incredibly. Are we going to take him right after Cooper Kupp, knowing that Tyreek Hill's already off the board as well?
I mean, this is where decisions need to be made. I mean, in any fantasy draft, once we start getting into that third round, we're all kind of questioning everything, right? So, I mean, why not? Jamar Chase took that lead.
Well, we're not in the third round yet.
Well, we're getting there. And what I'm saying is he's comfortable with Joe Burrow being in LSU. They both played for the Tigers, and they didn't miss a beat this year, correct? Right. And as we further getting into this discussion, we're putting Jamar Chase ahead of Justin Herbert, who took a leap in his second year. So what's your thoughts? Are you taking Jamar Chase over Justin Herbert next year?
Yeah, if I'm in that position and I've already taken, someone like Elliott or Fournette or Jefferson already, I'll probably take Jamar Chase right there instead of Herbert. Whereas the next person who probably took one of those three guys, they'll be getting Herbert on the turnaround pick. They've got their quarterback, but they miss out on that position player. Jamar Chase is a great example of a player that produces whether or not there's limiting factors around them. T. Higgins is there, Joe Mixon's there, but the ball gets spread around. Not so much like the Chargers, where Justin Herbert's a great quarterback, but you seem to see like such a spread that it's not just Keenan Allen or Mike Williams getting the ball. It's Parham and Jared Cook and guys like that, and it's really hard for any one wide receiver to dominate. So I think Jamar Chase works out here, and Herbert's a great pick right after that, because then that person's got their QB, and after that none of the quarterbacks really come close. What's interesting here though is who I want to talk about at number 24. This is pretty controversial, but I think Kyle Pitts goes here. We've seen Travis Kelce off the board, and we'll talk about why Mark Andrews not there, but like Kyle Pitts, he's got a ridiculous amount of stats for a rookie. It's the lack of touchdowns hurting him from a fantasy perspective, and that could be changed once Matt Ryan's out of here with that ridiculous contract. But Kyle Pitts wound up number 5 ranked tight ends on the season. He averages 9.1 points a game, which is great for tight ends. He's had 300-yard plus games in his rookie season, 64 receptions as it stands, 101 targets, 949 yards. He's on pace for about 75 to 80 receptions and 1,100 yards. And I think that this is the great opportunity for someone who already saw Kelce go off the board and they draft Jonathan Taylor. That's you're taking Jonathan Taylor with your first pick. Kyle Pitts as your tight end to round it out is not a bad idea when people like you and me were taking Travis Kelce number 1.
No, I think it's a beautiful pick. I mean, like, the thing is with Pitts, we had talked about this at extent. We had talked about in our flop draft that they would go Mac Jones, that they would go quarterback, but no, they went best position player, and that's totally fine because, again, of the stats you named. This dude per reception was averaging 14.8 yards. That's insane. That's absolutely insanity. For him to only have 1 touchdown on the season goes to show you this all boiled down to
change.
Quarterback. Of course it does. Because the Atlanta Falcons are taking a quarterback first round this year. We were just 1 season ahead. There's not a doubt in my mind because, it's over. Like, the Matty Ice thing's done and over with. And it was a great story.
Yeah, we actually predicted Mac Jones to the Falcons. You heard it here first from Rob. It didn't happen, but
should have.
Look what's going on with that. But
it should have.
That's the top 24. The notables that were left off, but could return some first or second round value, are going to be Mark Andrews at tight end. We're not denying what he did.
Absolutely not.
I couldn't believe he got traded in our ESPN league. Talk about DeAndre Swift for a second.
Yes, I like DeAndre Swift because are the Lions coming to their own in the better end of the second half of this season? I don't know. I don't believe in Jared Goff one bit, but I sure as hell love DeAndre Swift. I think this dude's going to be a monster. I think he's going to be an undoubted top 5 running back very soon in his career, and I think he should not be slept on next year. I would love to have an opportunity.
So there's some other guys that
to take a running back
They're in that
very
same
early
boat.
and get DeAndre Swift in the second round. I would not have a problem with that.
Javonte Williams is one of those guys you're probably going to want to look out for. Like if Melvin Gordon's leaving the Broncos, he's going to take over that backfield. He's already proven himself to be very talented on a very bad team. Cam Akers coming back from his Achilles. Kyler Murray, who we think could return that value that Herbert, Mahomes, and Allen could give in the first couple rounds. If he bounces back, he could be the sleeper, but right now with his injury, he'll probably fall a little bit. Deontay Johnson, Stephon Diggs, were they snubbed?
I mean, it's possible. Kyler Murray is 11th ranked quarterback in ESPN. He missed a whole month. I mean, let's not forget this, guys. Like, don't sleep on Kyler Murray this year. Deontay Johnson, Stephon Diggs, I think go hand in hand. Again, if we talk about Pittsburgh drafting a quarterback, you have to look at Deontay Johnson being a wide receiver one very quickly. And Stephon Diggs is just as talented as he was his whole career. What about Jalen Hurts? Do you think Jalen Hurts is the potential Josh Allen heir? What is your thoughts on that, Ryan? You're a very big Jalen Hurts guy.
I think what people have thought about Jalen Hurts this year, and with what most of the people that had a good opinion of him have seen, I would have to think Jalen Hurts falls out of these top 2 rounds, but could return that value as a top 5 quarterback again. He could settle in a lot like Josh Allen did over his first 2 years. So he's just maturing right now, and I think it's a good thing that they're giving him the whole season to play out so he could reach that potential. Cordero Patterson, I think he falls. He's someone we left off this list, even though he's been a top, back in the NFL. I don't think he's going to continue that trend. He's been on a ton of teams already. He used to be like a specialist who returns punts and kick returns. I don't think you expect to get this again from next year, but you take a late round flyer on him. Now, just to cap it all off, is Saquon officially a bust? He is off our top 24. I would not take him. I would take David Montgomery in the top 30 over Saquon. What say you?
I'll make it quick, and I'll make it simple, and I'll make it fun. Within the first month of next season, we will know whether or not Saquon Barkley is a bust. I would hate to label him that now, but his first few seasons in the NFL is not telling me anything, and it's scaring me. But I do love Saquon Barkley. I think the Giants are a horrible organization. I think they need to draft a quarterback, and I still don't believe that would fix the Giants' problem going forward. What's your thoughts, Ryan, before we leave?
I just know that, we talked about it, me starting him, that semifinals in the ESPN playoffs was a terrible idea. I'm so lucky that I won by the skin of my teeth. He is going on the bench for Darrell Williams this week. I do not take Saquon over any of the players we mentioned thus far. Tight ends drop off in our draft. We're not taking Kelsey as high as we did that first time, but he still might go first round. And it's time to consider QBs in the first round. That's what you can take away from this. Once again, this is Fantasy R&R with Rob and Ryan. We will see you next time.